Welcome to the Well Off Podcast, where the goal is to motivate, inspire, and share success principles. Today, I am sitting with Tyler Pearson from Malleum. Is that right?
Close, but
How do you say
not
it?
so close. Malleum,
Malleum, sorry.
which is a
It's
Latin
tough
word for hammer.
Latin word for hammer, associated with Hammertown, associated with Hamilton.
Associated with also just construction as well.
Construction as well. All right, I'm just trying to piece it together.
Yep, no worries.
All right.
A lot of people ask.
Yeah. Before we get into more of the real estate stuff, I just usually start off by asking about your personal life before real estate. So if you want to tell us a bit about your childhood, where you grew up, things of that sort.
Sure. So I grew up in southwestern Ontario, down by Sarnia, Ontario specifically, and to be very specific, in a town called Corunna, which is about 10 minutes south of Sarnia on the St. Clair River. So born and raised on the water, and still very much a huge part of my life, for sure. And then after high school in Sarnia, I went to Laurier, where I received my business degree. And like a lot of people, upon receiving your business degree, I did what you're supposed to do, or so you're told to do, and that's go into the corporate world. And I did that for about 10 years before exiting that to pursue real estate full time.
Cool. Can you tell me a bit more about what you did on the corporate side?
Sure. Yeah. I worked for a company called Unisource Worldwide. I ran their North American and then eventually their global accounts. So working with a lot of consumer packaged good companies like Unilever and Procter & Gamble, a lot of Fortune 500 companies. And it was a great training ground for sure in terms of, obviously, I think two things: how to be accountable and how to be responsive. Two characteristics that I think are very rare still today. So I have no regrets on my corporate time, but like always, it was ready to kind of take a jump. I was doing real estate pretty much from the first year since venturing into my corporate world, always kind of just buying small single-family properties. And I literally said when the income from my real estate portfolio got closer, ultimately surpassed my corporate income, that's when I would officially jump in with 2 feet. And yeah, it's been just over 3 years now since I've been doing it full time. So no regrets, great training ground, but happy to be building something for myself now as opposed to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. So you said it's been 3 years. Is that since the first time you invested or since you left your corporate
Yeah, it's
job?
been 3 years since I left my corporate career. I've been investing in what I'll call value-added real estate for over 10 years now. I think it's 11 or 12 years now off the top of my head.
Cool.
And again, started doing like a lot of people, kind of 3-bed, 2-bath townhomes, then really saw the value and just kind of took an immediate attraction to multifamily and sold all my single family homes and then started to focus more on the multifamily side of things.
Got it. Where did you start investing in real estate?
The first few properties that I'll call it investment properties, were purchased actually in my hometown of Sarnia, Ontario. Learning lessons for sure. I did that because, not so much because the economic fundamentals, I did it because the price tag was cheap.
Yeah.
I have no problem saying that was a learning lesson, although I didn't lose money. The capital impairment was pretty high because they didn't certainly appreciate nearly to the extent that I would have focused on economic fundamentals. So I later sold those a few years later, and then I got in to the Toronto market about 10 years ago after that as well. So the Toronto market ride created some equity. I have no problem saying that, which further fueled the ability to kind of begin to build out the portfolio through some refinances and whatnot.
Yeah, sounds good. Why did you decide to leave Sarnia?
Personally, or sell off the investment properties?
No, I mean, just in general, why'd you relocate? I'm assuming you relocated.
Yeah, no, I did. Yeah. You know what? I love my hometown for sure. There's a tremendous amount of, just quality of life down there is unparalleled, to be honest. It moves a little bit slow for me at times. And, moving to Toronto after university, I just really liked the networking side of things. I love, obviously, the opportunities that were available. Not to say there's not opportunities in Sarnia, because quite frankly, I do think there's some tremendous opportunities down there right now. But I made the jump. I still love going back. Still have a ton of family and friends back there. But right now, home for my wife and my child and I is now not in Toronto. It's in Aldershot, Ontario, so between Burlington and Hamilton. So loving that area, and no regrets at all with everything to date.
Got it. And so at one point, were you living in Toronto?
Yep. I was in TO for my entire corporate career. So I was living right downtown Toronto for 10 years, which again was great for sure, especially living in that type of city and environment throughout your 20s. Like anything, that chapter kind of closes and another one begins. And getting married and having children is kind of the new chapter, and it's been the best chapter yet.
Mm-hmm. Great. Good. So now that you have or at this point, I'm saying you sold off all your properties, if we go back to that time,
Yep.
and then you're looking to get into multifamily, or,
Yep.
or were you already starting to invest, or did you just jump right into what you're doing now?
I jumped into it. Like, I definitely saw the merits in multifamily. I really liked how I could look at a property and not, what's the best way to describe it? I really enjoy multifamily, how it's quite frankly analyzed like a business. It is valued based on the income that it produces, and it's just that simple. And I think, over time, I've gotten pretty good at combing the P&L and looking for opportunities, whether it's increasing rent or whether it's optimizing expenses, whether it's reconfiguring the box to just create more value. I love things that I can control. I have no problem saying that. And I think multifamily focused on the value add play is something that you really can't control. You need to be careful, like always, and you need to do your proper diligence. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity within that space, both over the last number of years, and I think out over the next kind of 3, 5, 7 years, specifically in this geography, the opportunities, quite frankly, are endless.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so I understand everything you're saying, and I'm just curious to know, when you were getting into multifamily, were you investing personally, with your own cash, or were you? Maybe we'll get into what you do in a second.
For sure. Good question. So anybody who's investing in real estate, I have no problem saying, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, you do run out of capital.
Yeah.
You can certainly recycle your capital through things like creating value and refinancing and whatnot, and redeploying that capital to another investment. But yes, short answer is the first handful of multifamily properties were done on my own. That capital was the benefit of some earlier wins earlier on, but definitely I wanted to continue to grow my portfolio, and the way to do that was, at that point, bringing in outside third-party joint ventures. And similar to probably a lot of people that and a lot of stories that people hear, it was a very simple, in a way, somewhat unsophisticated structure from a tax and liability perspective, but it was a 50-50 JV where I'm the real estate guy, I would find the property, manage it all, and I would find an investor that obviously knew and wanted exposure to real estate, knew about the value that could be associated with it, but just didn't want to devote time, energy, or effort to dealing with all the hair that at times come with managing value in real estate. So I did a handful of those deals. Fortunately, they all worked out very, very well. And the one thing I know is money follows money, and it allowed me to continue to grow the portfolio.
Did you find that it was easier for you to get a JV partner because of your corporate background, or was it because of your real estate background?
Good question. It's a funny question, actually, because the first JV partner I had that wrote, back then, and still, quite frankly, even now, a 6-figure check, that was one of my old largest clients in the corporate world. So he always knew what I was doing on the side, and he just said, "Hey, I'm one of those guys that wants exposure to real estate. I definitely don't want to be doing what you're doing, working the hours that you're doing. But if you come across something, let me know." And truly, that was the first actual JV that I've ever had, and we still remain very close, and he continues to reinvest as well.
Got it. So he was investing personally, not using the company's cash.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Total personal investment. Yep.
Personal. Great. Well, that worked out really well.
It did. Yeah. It definitely did. It's a good little story.
Okay. So do you want to tell us about what you're doing today?
Sure. So in short, I'm still doing what I've always done. It's just I'll call it a little bit more sophisticated structure. I met my new business partner through my wife, ironically enough, a handful of years ago. And he is another business guy. He went to Ivy in London, Ontario. Like most people, he went to Bay Street. He's your typical Bay Street / Wall Street, I call it, assassin. He is a private equity guru. He was working at the time for Canada's largest private equity company, a company called Onyx. And similar to some of my earlier JVs, he's like, "Tyler, I would love to get involved in real estate. You're doing it more than anybody I know. What are your thoughts on me potentially making an investment as a silent partner?" I said, "Great, let's go out and have a drink and let me walk you through exactly what I'm doing, and you can tell me whether or not it's a fit for you." We did that. He felt it was a fit, and I said, "Okay, the next test is come down to Hamilton. Let me drive you around some of the projects that I've got on the go to really see if there's a fit for you." Because as we all know, some of these projects, they can be a little bit daunting at the beginning, but I'm a firm believer that's where the opportunity is. And he came down, I gave him the tour, and he was ready and wanting to make an investment. But he said, as opposed to write a check, what are your thoughts on me actually leaving Onyx at the time? And we'll take my expertise and your expertise, put them together, and we'll form a true private equity fund and raise larger sums of capital and basically follow the exact same recipe that you were doing, just with a lot more sophistication around structure, tax liability, and whatnot. So it's been a great, I'll say, marriage over the last 2.5 years since Malleum's been around.
Yeah.
We've have 4 private equity funds into the ground. We just raised our 5th. We've raised just over 22 million in the last 2.5 years. So we're growing at a nice clip. We're growing at a pace that we feel comfortable with, which we feel is very, very important. And as we've continued to grow, we've certainly grown our management team as well, which has been phenomenal over the last kind of 2 years, just to see it all evolve. And in the grand scheme of things, we're still very, very, very small. I have no problem saying that, but we like the foundation that we're continuing to build, and we firmly believe we're set up for future success for sure, both ourselves and our investors.
Yeah, well, that's great. The number you mentioned, 22 million in 2.5 years, that's pretty impressive. I know maybe compared to other, like say if you're on Wall Street or something, that might be considered small, but as a Canadian investor, it's not that bad.
I certainly think it's a pretty good number in 2.5 years. Again, it's nice to have a partner that complements you. My partner is definitely, wired me a certain way now, where he's like, these are early innings, it's early seed. It's important to put wins on the board, which we've done, no problem saying. But we're mindful at the way in which we grow, and we're going to continue to just kind of go after base after base hit, as opposed to go out for a larger raise. So it's been great. It's been obviously a lot of work, but I would not have it any other way.
Were you sold right off the bat when he said, hey, I'm going to quit my job, we'll start something together?
Yeah, I think short answer, yes. I think anybody who's willing to leave, I'll say, a comfortable environment from a compensation perspective and just put on the boots and jump, I know I have a tremendous amount of respect for that person, whether it be a guy or a girl. In this situation, he made a commitment to me, and there was no hesitation whatsoever. I knew he had a different skill set that he could bring to me. He knew that I had different skill set and experience that I could bring to him. And we felt incredibly confident moving forward, forming the company, and moving forward with our first raise, and haven't looked back since. So yeah, it's been a phenomenal ride, but it's still very, very early innings, and we still have a ton of work to do, but we're super excited for it.
Yeah, great. How long did it take you to launch that first fund?
Yeah, we formed the company in April, I think off the top of my head, April 2016, maybe March 2016. And it was about 2.5, 3 months before we had our first fund raised, and we were deploying it. And then we raised our second one about 6 months after that. Okay,
so from start to finish, it just took about 2-3 months to get the fundraise, including all the paperwork, the structuring.
And that's the benefit of having a guy that really knows that space, right? Yeah. So we're, like a lot of private equity vehicles, we are a GP-LP model. So my partner and I, we're the general partner. All of our investors are the LPs. General partner manages all the affairs of the kind of the enterprise. And every fund that we've raised is a closed-end fund. So we go out, we raise a whack load of capital. That capital gets deployed. Once it's deployed, we then have the ability to go out and raise another fund. We cannot raise 2 funds or manage everything without one fund being fully seeded. And yeah, we've just continued to do that. And every fund we've gone up 2 or 3 million. And that's kind of the way that we continue to see ourselves growing.
So I'm not sure if I understand this correctly, but it sounds like you start a new fund for every project?
So each fund will buy a basket of properties, in short. So this next fund that we're just wrapping up, we're going to have a bunch of capital that's committed to us by ourselves as well as our investors. That gives us that much capital to go out and begin to acquire properties and reposition properties. Once that capital has been invested, we then will move forward with raising another fund and basically rinse and repeat and start the process all over again.
Yeah. Can you explain how your limited partners and yourselves are getting paid to do all this?
Yeah. So our limited partners, the fee structure for our value add funds is we take, in short, without going into all the details, we take 35% of the ups. So typical private equity models is, not to bore you, but it's a 2 and 20 model. 2% is assets under management, with just a fee or a meter that runs based on the capital under management. And then typical private equity funds will take 20% of the ups. When Greg and I were going through that structure as to whether or not that would be appropriate, one of the big things that was near and dear to my heart was, and I've always said it, even with previous JVs, is I don't feel comfortable taking money until my investors make money. So we rejigged the typical private equity structure, and we got rid of the 2% just management fee. And we said, as opposed to taking 20, we'll get rid of the 2% management fee, but we'll take 35% of the upside.
Okay. What's the upside, just to be clear?
Just the gain at the end of the day, without going into all the specifics.
When you sell.
When we sell or refinance, yeah.
Yeah, or refinance.
Yeah, so when there's a distribution, exactly, 35% is what we'll take.
Okay.
Our target, it's important to note, our target that we communicate to all of our investors is a gross return of 20% per annum. Fortunately, we've been really overachieving, which is a good thing.
Yeah,
for sure. We're well over 50 across the first few funds. So
must be hard to convince people that that's real, right? Some people must be thinking that you're making numbers up.
It's a good question. So that is a problem at times, given the returns that we've been able to post. That said, I think the way in which you communicate things, the way in which you structure things, the way in which you carry yourselves, we're obviously extremely detailed in terms of how we do our quarterly reports and whatnot. Like all of our investors receive extremely detailed quarterly reports, no different than like a public company per se. We pride ourselves on complete visibility. There's nothing to hide. We're incredibly proud of what we're doing within the Hamilton downtown core, and kind of we're incredibly appreciative of the commitment that our investors have shown to us. And it's a big, major obligation that I don't take lightly in terms of being a good steward of our investors' capital. I quite frankly place it at the highest priority within our organization.
Got it. So it sounds like you are taking 35% and the investors are getting the other 65%?
Correct. Yep. In short. Yep.
In short. Yeah. Are there any other methods of them getting paid, and how often do they get a payout? Do they get cash flow payouts or anything of that sort?
Again, without going into all the details, typical major recap event would be within kind of 12 to 18 months of us acquiring a building. That's typically when we're able to go in and really create a meaningful amount of lift or value within the project, at which point we'll then, right size the debt package, recapture a bunch of capital, spit that out to ourselves and our investors, lower their risk profile because they've got a bunch of equity out and they still own the building. So do we. And it really facilitates future growth because our investors have money, they still have the building, and if we're raising another fund, not always, but mostly, they're more than willing to continue to fuel that future vehicle.
Okay, so they're actually able to they're able to recapture their initial investment, maybe not all of it, but a good chunk of it after like 12 to 18 months?
Yep. So our first fund, it's the oldest one, so it's easy to speak to. It's just over 2 years now. The investors in that fund, they've gotten 110% back of their capital, and we haven't liquidated any asset yet. So
within 12 to 18 months.
Within that, in that case, it's over that was about 2 years that they were about 110.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. So it's a great story. It's pretty powerful when you're talking to somebody about whether or not the investment's right for them. And as we all know, sometimes the investment is not right for everybody. And as we all know, we're not here to convince people. We're here to educate people on an alternative investment option. We love what we do. We are now meaningful investors in all of our funds. We don't make money until our investors make money. And unfortunately, but it's a reality, my partner and I still personally guarantee every single mortgage within our portfolio. So to say we're motivated even would be an understatement.
Right.
We're incredibly motivated, and it definitely is why I get out of bed at the hours that I do.
Yeah, for sure. There's a fire burning in you to...
There definitely is. Yeah, it's a huge responsibility that honestly we don't take lightly, but it's, I feel incredibly grateful and appreciative to be given the opportunity. And I also know the pressure's on us to continue to deliver results. If we deliver results, I think our company, or I know our company, will continue to grow.
Yeah. Do you provide shares to the...
Yep.
To the
they buy
partners?
units. Yep. Exactly.
Okay. And the other question that I had was, where are you purchasing properties? Is it just in Hamilton?
We're certainly casting a net as far, to St. Catharines, Brantford, KW. We even look in Toronto. We're casting a net. That said, the catch basin that we continue to end up with is downtown Hamilton.
The numbers make sense.
Yep. Numbers, everybody's like, oh, you guys are just so pro-Hamilton. We are extremely pro-Hamilton, but we're not solely invested in Hamilton. We do have an asset in St. Kitts. I still have some legacy assets elsewhere, but the reality is, based on all of our diligence, Hamilton continues to provide the return profile that we really like and we can get behind and we feel comfortable with. So we've got a pretty good portfolio in Hamilton. And as it stands right now, we will probably continue to deploy meaningful amounts of capital in downtown Hamilton for a number of reasons. But, one of the biggest ones being it's just the economic fundamentals that exist there are just unlike any other that we've seen, especially for what you can buy $1 of income for in Hamilton versus what you have to buy $1 in income for in Toronto or KW or wherever else. There's just far more value.
I know. It just seems surprising that it's like a gold mine that people haven't discovered yet. But a lot of people are there. A lot of people are investing in Hamilton, but it just seems like there's so much potential there.
There is. Yeah. There's still, I think one of the main reasons, and we still come across it from time to time, is there's still, right or wrong, there's still a stigma associated with Hamilton. Yeah. Between you and I don't mind that stigma associated with Hamilton because the numbers are what they are. Yeah. The numbers work. And if people want to continue to cast out or, have a negative viewpoint on Hamilton, that's fine. I think quite confidently they're going to be missing a incredible opportunity over the next number of years. So if they don't want to take it, we'll certainly pounce on it for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that there's a lot of competition in what you do, or are you kind of doing something that's a bit unique?
There's definitely competition for sure. I think, I've learned a lot over the last number of years. I have a lot more to learn. Yeah. I have no problem saying that. Every day you get hit with something that was not foreseen, and every day you're somewhat scratching your head being like, how did I not see that? But it's just the reality of this business. If you're not wanting to accept all of the at times unpredictable things that are going to hit you smack dab in the face with investing in a market like Hamilton, you shouldn't be doing it, because there is at times a lot of stuff that comes up that I think may affect a lot of people. I think if you can just accept that that's just part of investing in an area that's evolving and changing, you'll do very, very well. I think one of the biggest things, specifically as it pertains to Malleum now, we do take a pretty conservative approach as it pertains to our financing. We're not putting second and third mortgages on them. We all know there's people that are definitely building a portfolio like that. I definitely tapped into second mortgages when I was building my portfolio. Given where I'm at in my life now, it's not something I'm willing or wanting to do, to be honest. I think there's a lot of people in the Hamilton market and a lot of markets in general that are over-levered, that I think that creates a lot more stress on both your portfolio as well as you just mentally, as we're seeing things like we're seeing right now with a little bit of uptick in the rates. So that's, I don't have a crystal ball. We'll see how things evolve, but I think keeping a proper debt structure is critical, just for your sanity, but one, obviously, for just your long-term longevity as it pertains to your portfolio.
You mentioned a little while ago that you had certain surprises come up. Can you give an example of something?
Well, I don't even know where to begin. Take your pick. Whether it's rodent issues, whether it's fires, whether it's floods, whether it's people breaking into construction sites on a daily basis. Like, honestly, you take your pick. Yeah. It's probably happened to us. I think anybody with, a real estate portfolio will probably agree that, crap just happens. Yeah. It's a matter of how you take that and how you kind of triage it and how you move forward, and ideally, hopefully, put a plan in place to ensure that it doesn't happen again. The reality is you can only do that for so many things, because unfortunately, certain things are going to happen again, like fires, like break-ins, like floods.
Like people are purposely setting fires, like an arson?
Not arson, but some of these buildings, there's as we inherit them, there are known drug issues for sure. I have no problem saying that. One of the buildings in our second fund, it caught on fire due to somebody at that point doing something that they should be doing. That was something I never expected, but it is what it is. It's why we have insurance as well. But it comes with the territory that's evolving. I don't think there's a building that we have had under construction that has not had some type of theft or vandalism. It is what it is. We'll continue to take it and continue to push forward. Yeah, we will not get discouraged by it, because if you do, you shouldn't be doing this, to be honest. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that always comes up. Yeah,
I'm sure some of the buildings you purchased may have had a bad reputation because they were in distress. And then when you go in there, because I've seen some of the work you've done, you guys totally turn the buildings around, make them look really nice. How do you, once it's renovated and looks really good and you get new tenants in there that are maybe a little bit better than the previous tenants, how do you ensure that there isn't any more vandalism and people, walking around on the outside selling drugs and doing all that stuff?
I don't think you'll ever prevent it 100%. I think being proactive is important. A lot of these are horribly lit from the perimeter perspective. So we're going in, making sure some of these buildings are literally lit up like a parking lot.
Yeah.
We're doing that right out of the gate. And then the other big thing is we're putting cameras around the perimeter right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. People place a high importance on sense of security. Yeah. They're willing to pay for it. Yeah. We've realized that. And it's just kind of one of the first things we do upon acquiring a building is just contain the site and then begin to work inward. And when we're going in, to your point, we're not just, changing out laminate flooring and giving it a coat of paint. We're going in and really taking these buildings back to the studs and basically rebuilding them. All new mechanicals, infrastructure, kitchens, baths, et cetera. They're basically high-end condo/apartments when we're done with it. And what we've realized is there's huge demand for quality product within downtown Hamilton. Yeah. Because the supply that is there right now is just, it's not overly high. I'll say, I have no problem saying that. And there's a tremendous amount of people moving to Hamilton, as we all know, that expect a certain level of quality as it pertains to their home. And we think we're doing a good job of hitting that. We can always get better, but we certainly think we found a sweet spot.
When you have these renovated places and they look really nice and you're trying to attract a good tenant, where are you finding these tenants are coming from and why are they coming to Hamilton?
Couple things as to why. One is just quality of life and affordability, for sure. That's not the sole reason, but that makes up a good amount of our new tenants. And the other one is just jobs. Whether it's a chef from Toronto that's moving out and he just got tired of the Toronto lifestyle and he sees just a higher quality of life in Hamilton, whether it's somebody like that, whether it's somebody taking advantage of all the medical science jobs that are coming up or the food processing jobs that are coming up. There's a really good economic story right now in downtown Hamilton. And the exciting part is I still think it's in the very early innings as well. But those are the two, I would say, people that are coming to Hamilton as to why. And then as to, ways in which we're able to capture that audience, we've internalized almost every component of our business from construction development to property management to legal to accounting. We really believe in keeping it under one roof so we can control it and ensure that we ultimately have alignment with all stakeholders, our tenants, our clients, our investors. And I think people that are coming to Hamilton appreciate that. And I think, like always, whether it's in real estate or any other business, word eventually gets out that, this company is doing something good and right and they're accountable. We know, again, we're not perfect. We still have a lot of room for improvement for sure. I tell our team that every single day, but I like the direction we're going in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because you're doing such great things in the city, really you are in a way transforming the city in a small portion, but you're doing your job there. Do you find that you're getting any acknowledgement from the government? Are they helping you, assisting you in any way?
Yeah, the city's been great. For the municipal level, this like the city of Hamilton has been fantastic. The economic development group has been extremely supportive from day one, right up to the mayor. Fortunately, he got reelected last night, which was fantastic news. Almost all of our major projects in the downtown core, at least on the major arteries like King Street, Barton Street, James, et cetera, almost all the larger repositions we've applied and have been awarded for grants, loan programs, et cetera. So they've been a huge partner. They know what we're doing. I think they're very supportive of it. Or actually, I know they're very supportive of it for sure. And it's a team approach. They know that, in order for us to continue to do what we are doing and what we want to do, these programs really make it possible. So it's, this is part of one of my meetings for later on today. It's letting them know how important these programs are and ensuring that they're continuously made available, not just to people like us, but to other people as well. I want to see other private investment roll into downtown Hamilton also, because all boats rise, right, when the tide comes up. So the city of Hamilton, nothing but positive things to say.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of what kind of economic impact, maybe what you've done personally with your partner, or maybe just in general, what investors like yourself, what kind of uptick there is in the economy when you do projects like this?
Yeah, that's a good question for sure. I don't think I can give you, a concrete answer. What I can tell you is, a lot of these buildings that we're acquiring especially a lot of the ones over the last few funds, they're mixed use buildings and they're commercial on the ground floor and residential on the top floor. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are vacant or have a high level of vacancy. The economic kind of injection that I would say that we're doing that we can definitely see and feel and certainly appreciate is we're bringing tenants to residential units that were never there or certainly have not been there for 10 plus years.
Yep.
And we're creating commercial spaces that real young, excited entrepreneurs and kind of national chains want to operate in,
right?
Which obviously then that has a ripple effect to jobs and taxes and everything else. So that's certainly something we're seeing for sure. How I can, put a number on that, it's probably tough to tell, but every project is bringing more residents and more jobs to the downtown core, which is something we're incredibly proud about.
Yeah. And not just that, but maybe this is just a side point. When you are putting these places up for rent, you've got to qualify the tenants, make sure that they've got the income and everything.
Yep.
And you're saying that a lot of them are relocating from Toronto and other cities.
Yep.
So they're bringing their annual income and now they're probably most likely spending it in Hamilton.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like some people talk about, there's all these people moving to Hamilton and they're just going to Toronto to spend their money and work and yada, yada, yada. I vehemently disagree with that. I think, maybe they are. Maybe some people are hopping on the train, which I think is still a good thing.
Yeah.
Going to work for the day and coming back. But the reality is they're still buying groceries in Hamilton. They're still eating at restaurants in Hamilton. They're still going to the parks in Hamilton on the weekends. There's a lot of great, wonderful things that come of that. And if they're not working in Hamilton, all of them, like I'm willing to accept that as being okay as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely just everything you're doing is good for the city. It's good for Hamilton in general.
We obviously, I'm sure you can tell, we thoroughly enjoy what we're doing. I think the fun part is a lot of these buildings, I don't pride myself as being this master architect. A lot of these buildings have phenomenal bones. They've got a phenomenal streetscape. They just need the dust blowing off them, for lack of better words, because they've just sat idle and in many cases vacant for 10, 15, 20 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, truly. So it's incredibly rewarding to see it kind of what it was, obviously, when we acquire something like that. Then obviously seeing it fully occupied with great, wonderful residential tenants and, wonderful operating businesses. It's really a nice kind of value chain to be a part of, for sure.
Why do you do what you do?
That's a good question. I think I do what I do specifically for my family, for sure, for both my wife and my child and soon to be second child. There's no reason that's why I do what I do, and there's no reason that's why I work the hours that I do. I believe in what we're doing within the downtown core of Hamilton. Again, not just, we're obviously talking Hamilton specifically, but if we buy a building in St. Kitts, I'll say the same thing, quite frankly, because I believe in our model. Whether we're repositioning a building in downtown Hamilton or in St. Catharines, for example, I genuinely believe in what we're doing. I believe people want and quite frankly need quality places to live. I believe the inventory that is out there today, in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases is subpar. And it's just incredibly rewarding to be a part of and to give somebody, a new home, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
The other thing is, this is going back to why I left corporate, is I've always just been of the mindset I'd rather, if I'm going to work as hard as I work, I'd rather build my own business as opposed to somebody else's business. That's just a fundamental principle that has been ingrained in me for a number of years. And now the exciting thing is now as we begin to build out a team, you have property managers, contractors, directors of developments, et cetera, lawyers, accountants. It's another step or chapter in my life is in actually managing or playing a role in managing that team and having people, relying on you for their income and paychecks.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other level of responsibility that we do not take lightly. But at the same time, we're incredibly appreciative to have the people that we do surround us. And, it's really, really rewarding to be part of that and obviously continue to build the team moving forward.
And is your role today to manage the renovations, hire the property manager, do that sort of stuff?
Like I'll still classify us as a startup company, to be honest. So like a lot of startup companies, I'd be lying if I said we're not wearing a ton of different hats on any given day. Where I certainly spend the bulk of my time is on, finding opportunities, connecting the dots of how these opportunities can ultimately come to fruition, working with the city and the economic development group, working with, our director of development in-house, the architects, the engineers, et cetera. There's a lot of areas that I still touch, and I probably, quite frankly, thinking about it, will always touch, because I think it's important to keep your hand on the pulse. I've gotten better at delegating. That has not usually been a strong skill of mine. I have no problem admitting that. But I think it's like anything, when you find the right people, it becomes easier to delegate. And I think we've got the right people in our organization. So it is allowing me to focus more on, I'll call it value-added activities that are ultimately going to play a role in growing the company.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And okay, I just thought about this. When you're getting some of these buildings that you said were about 100 years old, potentially, maybe even more.
Yep.
Even if you fix them up, how long is their shelf life?
Good question. I think, I'm not an architect or an engineer. I can tell you, based on the level of renovations that we're doing, the shelf life is certainly going to outlast you or I. Okay. I feel very good about that. We are, in many cases, for lack of better words, like completely rebuilding these buildings. Mm-hmm. So I feel very good that they'll
keep the shell.
We'll keep the shell, and we'll still do structural work on the shell if required. Mm-hmm. And I think it's, not to go off on a tangent, I think it's important that these types of buildings, find a way to ensure that they last another 100 years, because it really, in my eyes, creates part of the urban fabric, and specifically for Hamilton, it creates some of that urban fabric that is unique and different. It's great having a city with glass towers, but at times a city with just glass towers can lack character and soul. Yeah. And I think Hamilton has an unprecedented opportunity to obviously protect the past. We all know there's going to be towers going up. There's some already going up as we speak. But I think finding that right balance is really, really going to be important. And city planners and guys like Jason Thorne, that's on their agenda. And I'm confident they have the ability to get that right.
Mm-hmm. So do you see Hamilton becoming a city like Toronto in the sense that you'll have towers all over the place, glass towers?
I think, I know there's a number of permits that are in the queue or have been approved. Mm-hmm. So undeniably, there's going to be glass towers starting to appear on the Hamilton skyline. Yeah, for sure. I think the city is being mindful at the pace in which they increase density. I think, when and if light rail truly does break ground, you're going to see, that's where inevitably I would say the density is going to increase. Mm-hmm. The zoning has been now rejigged a handful of months ago to support increased density along the LRT corridor. Again, whether or not the LRT officially breaks ground, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm certainly hoping it does. But yeah, I think it will never be Toronto. It'll be Hamilton, I think, and that's okay. Hamilton is its own city with its own history and its own character. Mm-hmm. And I think protecting and preserving that should be paramount.
Yeah. What do you think the effects of the LRT will be? Because to me, I understand a lot of money is going into this project. It's going to impact the city. But for me, just to have something that goes east and west, I'm not really sure how that's going to have an impact on the city.
Yeah, I think this is obviously a hot topic for sure. I think it's important to remember this is a starting point, right? Most mass transit infrastructure was not built out all in one shot. Mm-hmm. This is a starting point to inject $1 billion+ into the downtown core. Everybody is entitled to their own opinion. I fully respect that. I'm a firm believer that if you look at most global cities around the world, LRT or some form of mass transit infrastructure plays a meaningful role in that city's future development. So whether or not it officially breaks ground, time will tell. I'm a huge supporter of it for good reason. I think it makes sense. I think people more than ever measure their commute in minutes, not miles. Yep. And the more efficient you can make something for someone, I think ultimately that the greater the value people will place on something like that. And let's not kid ourselves. There will be, if it does go through, there will be pain for a handful of years within the downtown core. It will be at times gridlock, at times frustrating, but people have to have a bigger view than just over the next 3 to 5 years. This is something that, in my opinion, will really put the city on kind of the next chapter moving forward. Mm-hmm. And if it takes 3 to 5 years of a little bit of inconvenience, I'm more than willing to sign up for that.
You're talking about construction?
Yeah, specifically as it pertains to construction.
Yeah. And how long do you think it will take for Hamilton, for the quality of residents? I don't want to be rude in any way, but there's a lot of drugs, there's a lot of crime and stuff like that in the city. How long do you think it'll take before that quality of life improves to become maybe similar to Mississauga or Burlington or something in that?
That's a tough question to answer. I think, like a lot of areas, and Hamilton's not alone. Mental health is a huge issue in Hamilton. The city and various organizations are certainly very well aware of that. There's programs that are obviously being created and targeted to improve upon that. It's a problem. I have no problem saying that. It's a problem that needs to have a spotlight put on it. More and more people are becoming aware of it.
And it's not just Hamilton, too. It's St. Catharines.
It's not just Hamilton.
Brentford.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
It's really just kind of a national problem that just needs to have a bigger spotlight put on it, and new programs need to come out to acknowledge it and really try and improve upon the status quo. I think Hamilton is going to always be the city that I think most people know it. It's a gritty town that I think, in a way, that's kind of one of the reasons why I love it. It's one of many reasons why I love it. Like, there's a lot of people, especially within the entrepreneurial community, they just roll up their sleeves and get shit done, to be blunt, which is contagious. And I think the startup community really is just, again, very much in its infancy stages in Hamilton. But fortunately, I have the fortunate ability, I guess, to be in touch with a lot of these young entrepreneurs. And it's amazing to see some of the things that are on the go and kind of how driven they are. And they don't want to leave Hamilton, which is exciting. A lot of these people are from Hamilton, or they moved to Hamilton, but specifically the ones that are from Hamilton, they know that at times it's gone through some ups. I don't think it is going to go away. I think, can it coexist with a different demographic that maybe, coming in from out of town, or some people from Toronto, as crazy as that sounds, can two different demographics coexist? I think the answer is yes. Whether or not everybody wants to agree with that, they're entitled to their own opinion. But in a way, I love being in Hamilton, and I love the people there. I love the city. I certainly believe it can coexist. And from what I've seen in restaurants and bars, barber shops, incubator hubs, it is existing. People just need to kind of see it for their own eyes. And when they do, I think they'll be pretty proud of what they're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. How big do you, or maybe not how big, but where do you see your company going?
Good question. I think, we obviously have short, medium, long-term goals. I think I look at our company as it stands right now the way I would always look at prior to Malleum, in terms of my own portfolio, where I would always just focus on the next property. I would not worry about getting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 properties. It would just be focused on the next property. Don't forget your learnings. Don't forget your practices, and just continue to grow as an investor and as a professional. So I'd say short term, that's kind of what my personal goal would be for Malleum. It's just to focus on the next fund. Obviously, we're just coming up off a raise. So right now it's focusing on getting that capital deployed in a very efficient and effective manner. I've got no problem saying that we definitely see ourselves as a large asset manager. So I'll let you draw your own conclusions on what that number would be. But we've raised, again, over 20 million in the last 2.5 years. We certainly have some pretty audacious goals, but we're not willing to, sacrifice anything by trying to get them or achieve them quicker. We know that in order to get to where we ultimately want to go, we've got to continuously perform. And if we do that, I feel very good about getting to the point where my business partner and I routinely talk about.
And are you growing by referral? Are people just telling their friends, saying, "Hey, I invested in this company"? And
so we don't market. No problem saying that. We are a true private equity fund. So we don't market. We just basically family and friends. We're very, very happy to say, I think in this last fund, I think we have about an 87 or 88% repeat investor base. So that, to us, tells a story. That's something we're incredibly proud about. It can always get better, I guess. But we take a lot of confidence knowing that people continue to reinvest in us, because if they are, they're obviously liking what they're seeing, both from a return perspective, but also just how we report and kind of how we make ourselves available to all of our investors.
So you mentioned 22 million. Sounds like a pretty intimidating number potentially for some people. Is there a certain range that people have to invest to get in?
Short answer is yes. Every fund we've gone up. So I'll just leave it there. So short answer is yes. There is a minimum commitment size. Every fund we've increased that. Actually all of our investors, I will say this, are high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals that again are looking for exposure to this asset class, know the benefit and the value that can be delivered from it. Just don't want to do what we at times have to do on a daily basis. But that's obviously where we earn our rewards by rolling up our sleeves and really creating value.
And are for the most part, are these Canadian investors, or are they
For the most part,
international?
yes.
Yeah.
For,
Okay.
for the most part, we do have some outside of the country, but for the most part, yes,
Yeah.
they are Canadian.
Cool. Okay, why don't we jump into the next section, which
Sure.
is the random five.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you 5 questions. Just tell me what comes to mind, and they're going to be totally random. You'll see in a second.
All right.
All right. If you had to watch just one team for the rest of your life, and that was the only team you could watch, would it be the Leafs or the Blue Jays?
That's an easy one. I'm a hockey guy.
Okay.
Through and through. Leafs for sure, especially right now.
Yeah. So you'd give up the Blue Jays?
In a heartbeat.
All right. Would you prefer an early breakfast or a late dinner?
I am a very early morning guy, so I'm usually up around 5. So breakfast for sure. I'm usually in bed more than or earlier than most probably 7 or 8 year olds. So yeah, early breakfast for sure.
Yeah. What are you going to sleep at 9?
9 is usually what I target. Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's good. Do you have a morning routine? Like, do you work out in the morning?
I do. Yeah. It fell a little bit by the wayside over the summer months, unfortunately. I have no problem saying that. But yeah, it's back in full swing now. So in the morning, it's usually up around 5, a little bit of meditation from time to time, usually not every day, but a few days a week. Definitely physically active. I go to the gym. Quick shout out to F45 in Hamilton.
Right.
They're directly below our office. So I personally make a big point to support them. And now I have no excuse not to be incredibly active having a gym below my office. So yeah, that's pretty much the morning routine. And then a big, powerful breakfast. And then that usually sets me off for the day. But I do kind of hit my point around 6 o'clock or so. And then it's family time.
6 o'clock, family time, shut it all down.
Yeah. That's the goal for sure.
Yep. All right. What type of music were you into when you were 15?
Tragically Hip, for sure.
Okay.
One and only band that I would play on repeat in my Jeep over and over and over again.
Yeah. Tragically Hip and hockey.
Yeah. Two can't
things.
be more Canadian than that.
Yeah. Would you prefer beer or wine? And I think I know the answer.
That's a good question. Depends on the night. I love beer. I love supporting. Specifically, I honestly really do like supporting and seeing this wonderful theme as it pertains to the microbreweries and kind of that whole startup scene.
Yep.
But I will not lie. I definitely enjoy a nice bottle of red with my wife when she's not pregnant. So right now it's more beer for me. And she's looking at me with sometimes daggers being like,
right.
I wish I could, but only 3 months to go.
Yeah. So the pregnancy impacts whether it's beer or wine.
Yes, that's a good conclusion
Your
for sure.
preference. Got it. And what toppings do you put in your Subway sandwich?
So I'm a value guy, as you probably can tell. I'm a value add investor. So I think the price is the price, right? So I literally tell them to put everything in.
Okay.
Because it's, in my eyes, a heck of a lot more food for the same price as somebody just getting meat and cheese. So that's an easy one for me.
That's a funny answer. I actually see how they can possibly get the most value from a restaurant, and they went to like these burrito restaurants, and they found that the best value you can get is to ask them to dismantle the burrito and just give you all the parts separately. And you get like twice as much of everything.
Interesting. I might have to try that out next time I'm at a burrito place.
Yeah, give that a try. See if it works. So that's it. Was there anything you wanted to add? And do you want to share your contact information in case people want to get in touch?
I'll leave that to you to share. That's okay.
Sure.
No, I don't think there's anything else I'd really feel the need to add. I obviously am incredibly appreciative of given the opportunity to come in and speak and kind of share my story for sure. I hopefully some way, somehow this will empower somebody to kind of take that next step. My advice to anybody is it's not the most detailed advice, but I think it's just simple, is just get out and do it. When it comes to real estate, there's a ton of different strategies and there's a ton of different avenues that you can go down. Have laser focus on one strategy. That was one of the biggest learnings that I learned, unfortunately, earlier in my career. Have laser focus, become an expert at it, and just work in ways that other people are not willing to work. And I will say this: anybody who says, one little beef that I have is people who talk about real estate being a passive investment. I will have no problem saying this. It is anything but passive. And I think the last 10 or 12 years of my life, nothing has been passive about it. It has been incredibly, incredibly active. But I think if you're willing to acknowledge that and put in the work, I truly do not believe there is any other investment vehicle that can create wealth like real estate.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. It could be passive if you choose to run
Correct.
your business.
Our
that way,
investors are
but
passive.
yeah,
Yes.
there you go.
And I think that's a good point. So I think
Yeah.
it's a matter of understanding what you want out of life and
Mhm.
what you want out of your investment.
Yeah.
If you want a silent investment,
Mhm.
yes, look for some type of alternative vehicle where you can write a check and, obviously do your diligence on the management team and ensure that they've got your interest kind of ahead of theirs, quite frankly,
Mhm.
and that there's alignment. But if you want to roll up your sleeves, that's,
Yeah.
presents you with an incredible opportunity as well. But nothing about that is passive.
Mhm.
It's hard work, but it's incredibly rewarding.
Sure. And even whether you choose the active or passive side of real estate, they're both lucrative. Like your passive
Extremely.
investors are probably making a better return than if they were investing in other products.
Yeah, I feel very confident. Maybe not for all, but certainly common feedback from our investor base is yes, this has been their best performing investment over the last 2.5 years. So
Exactly.
that's great to hear. And again, we are still early on, so now pressure's on to continuously deliver.
That's
But again, that's what gets us out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. I wish you the best. I
Thanks.
hope you'll continue to succeed. And I appreciate all your time this morning. I know
No
you've
worries.
got an appointment to head out to. So once again, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. Appreciate it, George.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Well Off Podcast. If you enjoy the content, then I would appreciate it if you shared it with your family and friends and anyone you know who may benefit. Until next time, I'm George Almasri. Enjoy the rest of your day.